Hey guys, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you for once again coming back home, family. For those of you that happens to be new here, I definitely hope that you hear something today that will persuade you to stay. Now, those that are returning, welcome back home, y'all. Let's jump straight into today's video. So I want to begin to speak about Joe Budden Podcast 688, and I'm going to make it very, very, very historical so that we can have some learning on our way to learning while looping in a few topics that has been covered on the podcast. Now, Melyssa Ford has gotten a lot of flack for not championing behind black men as well as having a lack of accountability. And so we're going to make this like a part thing. So there was a topic that came up on the Joe Budden podcast when they were talking about Cat Williams speaking on black men in Hollywood being pressured to wear dresses in order to advance, and how there is an agenda against the masculinity, the emasculation of the black male. And Joe began to ask Melyssa Ford what she thought about this topic. And Mel began to Me Too for the white man. That's literally what she did. She went down an entire list of white men that have worn dresses in movies. And this is problematic because this was talking about black men and black men's issues, and black men that are self-proclaimed straight black men, self-proclaimed black men that are not interested in wearing dresses, self-proclaimed black men that have no interest in going about these rituals of these steps in order to ascertain illumination. This isn't something that they are into. Some of them, though Masonic, some of them, though Boule, some of them, though fraternity and sorority, are not part of the illumination. There's a great difference in these things, and then some of them don't even fall under that. You have to begin to realize that there's just a certain belief system. And there are many different belief systems that can fall under Babylonian, that can fall under polytheistic, that can fall under henotheistic, that can fall under paganism. Like, you have to really, really realize that this thing that's going over in Holly Grove is way deeper than many of us will even begin to realize. Now, when we began to hear Melyssa do this, some people in the comments were shocked. Some people were finally echoing what it is that I said a long time ago. I made a comment before, and some people got mad about it when I stated that we need to stop holding Melyssa Ford to the standard of black women. We need to stop holding biracial women to the standard of black women. Let's put an asterisk and an addendum on that. Unless they were raised to be black women. Even then, there's a possibility that they can lean into their privilege, because the privilege does come with being biracial. Now, we can say and all agree that Melyssa, based on her phenotype, presents as a black woman. We can also say that Melyssa, her late father, may he rest in peace, was a black man. So if we are going based on Hebraic customs, then Melyssa indeed would be considered a Hebrew. We need to realize that Melyssa Ford was raised by her beautiful late mother, whom was a white woman. And there's a great difference between culturally and mindset, how different cultures are raised. And this is proven in a myriad of ways after hearing different viewpoints from Melyssa on various topics. So I'm not just like pulling this out of thin air. I don't believe in magic. And I like to be able to prove and fact check that which it is that I believe in. Melyssa also began to mention black men that have willingly put on dresses to become big. And she mentioned the Wayans brothers. Do we not realize that in Living Color? Do we not remember the dresses being on there? Even if they write it in the scripts themselves. Because she mentioned Tyler Perry as well. This is still clearly a prerequisite. When we began to look at biracialness, we need to begin to realize that there's many forms. I mean, we already know that, right? So the term mulatto that's used amongst black people has so many different meanings, and most people use it in a form of having one Caucasian parent and one black parent, right? What if I began to tell you that more times than not, and I'll just speak for my mulatto ancestors who were reclassified to Negro when they came over here, more times than not, when they're talking about one European parent, they're talking about a swarthy or a black European from the times of the Moors, the Jews, the Israelites in captivity over in Spain, France, Britain, all of these areas. Then they ended up having babies with the next quote-unquote shipment or disbursement or captivity of Jews and Moors that came in. So a lot of the Europeans that we think is European are really black, and we're going to get into the history as to how this happened. Dr. Umar Johnson began to dog ish out. You know, I talked about this before about having a Portuguese child's mother. Although we can all agree that the Portuguese are the blackest of the Sephardic Jews, and then Umar Johnson turned around and vehemently stated that he dates biracial women because they for sure have African blood in them. Dr. Umar, do you talk to these women and ask them if their daddy's black or if their mama's black? It's confusing for me because when you have biracial and mixing when it comes to black communities, there is going to be more times than not a gap in understanding, in realization. There will more times than not be a caping to the white issue or the greater understanding thereof or the excuses for. A lot of biracial people that I have met have innate racism on the inside of them and prejudice for black people, and they aren't even aware of it with the way that they center their thoughts, and they don't think that they can possibly be prejudiced against black people because they're black too. Joey began to tell Mel, all right now, I don't want to hear no more about that stand with women and all of this other thing because you have a problem with standing with men. And this has become the true rhetoric of her positions on a lot of points. And then she begins to say, well, I stood with Jonathan. I know I came in and I held Jonathan Major accountable, or whatever she did with Jonathan Major. She mentioned like 1 or 2 instances. Girl, bye. Let's begin to look at history and this whole one-drop rule that mostly only existed in Virginia. And the reason being, so some of my holiday ancestors, they were actually the founders of Jamestown, and they were swarthy Europeans coming from England as Quakers, coming from Scotland and coming from Ireland as Quakers. And we know Quakers are the Sephardic Jews who carries out the missions of Peter, which is to convert the Jews and the diaspora. A lot of them were mulattoes. So it was hard to begin to tell when a mulatto mixed with a mulatto is going to automatically whiten the blood out. There were some sayings when they, some quotes in the Senate and in the House when they were passing the laws for interracial marriage. And it was quoted saying that all of these white faces right here voting on this issue have, without a shadow of a doubt, Negro blood in them. So if we begin to villainize the Negro, we're in turn villainizing ourselves, because they know that they were birthed out of us. When we begin to look at the quadroons, which are 1/8 black, so these were passing women. They had to still identify as black. We're going to talk about prostitution and things like that, because a lot of these women end up living in whorehouses and they became fetishized because they were still thick and still had coarse hair, but their skin complexion was just lighter. So a lot of white men came in to be with them because they still had the mystery and the build of a black woman with the complexion and the passing of a white woman. So when we go over and we look at Kate, who y'all be up in arms about, who's been passing, even though I could look at her and already tell, like it's even some Pretty Little Liars, the actress who was named Spencer. I was looking at her face and she looked white, but nah, for me studying, I was just looking at her and I was like, she looked like a Creole. She reminds me of my mom's people. And I go look at her, look up her stuff, her mama black. We began to look at Channing Tatum. His father is a Jew. He's a Melungeon. These are people that you would think were white upon looking at them, but when you check out their ancestry, when you look at their last name, we begin to look at their features. So this is where you get your one drop rule. We have to realize that Thomas Jefferson had babies by his sister-in-law who was half Negro. So his wife was like 1/4 Negro. Y'all could look up the story. But their children, because they were born unto her, were enslaved because she was a black woman. When we begin to look at the plight of colorism in the black community, it goes very deep. I was looking at some of my holiday ancestors, one in particular, because I saw her picture. She was classified as a mulatto, then classified as white, then classified as black. And a lot of passing black people reclassified as whites and stayed that way to protect their families. Same with Native Americans when they began to mix and mingle with the Sephardic Jews that came over from Europe, as well as some of the Gentiles that were, there as well. There's a young lady who we believe we're related. Her last name is Reed. My grandmother's father last name is Reed. She a Biloxi Native American from Natchez, Mississippi. And she began to tell me that her grandfather was a passing man, but ever since she was a little girl, she knew he was black. And when I looked at her picture, I'm like, was she native? She looked Arabic to me. And her last name is Arabic. And she said on her grandfather's deathbed, he confessed that he was a black man. And her uncle stopped talking to the family. Biracialness, colorism, mindsets, the plight of the black man goes very, very deep. White men did not have to worry about reclassification. White men did not have to worry about slavery and having their family ripped from them. White men did not have to worry about being forcibly penetrated anally in order to break his psyche. White men did not have to worry about their language being taken away from them, their culture being taken away from them, their finances, their kingship, their authority, their wives being taken away from them, their seeds being taken away from them. They didn't have to worry about any of these things. And if we want to be completely honest, a lot of these things were part of their rituals, which the Israelites brought over from Babylonia, that became unto them. And then you have to also know that they had their own gods and their own deities that they began to chase after. So it may be okay for them to put on dresses. What we call emasculation in the Black community does not correlate with all of these other communities. Case in point, this whole 50-50 household, this is new to the Black community. This whole Black women don't want to work, this is new to the Black community. Black men don't want to provide, this is new to the Black community. Feminism, that was not part of us. Like, all of these things that have been adapted to the Black community are not ours, Melyssa. And as a Black woman who was raised by a Choctaw Native American Creole Black woman, who was raised by a Montserrati and West Indian Choctaw Native American Sephardic Jew by way of England and Ireland man, a Black man, there are some discrepancies in mindset. And that's going to take us to the caller, when the caller said, you know, that Mel basically is a fish out of water because she doesn't know how to navigate in masculine places. This is something that Mel has stated before. We can take that. She also began to say that her lack of accountability is deafening, and Mel immediately bucked up. Melyssa, you live in a state of delusion that is concerning. And I know you began to say that before your accident, you had some chemical imbalances already. Then after the accident, you went through some things as well. Seeing the way you duck, you dodge, you deflect, you have some female narcissistic tendencies, Mel, and they're deep. All of us have narcissistic tendencies. I have too much empathy to be a narcissist. Trust me, I've wondered, even though you can have more than one thing at the same time. And there are so many different types of narcissism. These are not just terms that we're going to use haphazardly or anything like that. We go to school for psychology and things of that nature in this household. So it's deafening the way that whenever somebody mentions the word accountability to you, you swear you're accountable. You swear that you're self-aware. You're a mirror to everyone else except for yourself. And these are the type of biracial women that I fear that Dr. Umar Johnson is betting. Because the mission is not the same. It's actually kind of dangerous. Because Mel is too old to be so aloof. And then the guys even went around the room and saying that they believe that Mel just pods a lot or whatever. I think that this is mostly her personality. There's only so much podding and so much masking and so much things that you can do. A lot of these things you can tell that Mel really feels this way, and she's ignorant to the Black plight on a lot of levels. Whether or not you agree, I really don't care. This is how I feel. Let's begin to study history. Let's begin to realize that, biblically speaking, the one-drop rule did not apply when we were in captivity, and even before, when our land allotments, it was based off of both parents, specifically the father. There are scriptures in Exodus and in Leviticus when an Israelite-ish woman was married to an Egyptian man, but the boy's birth father was an Israelite. So he was considered an Israelite. But them other kids would have been considered an Egyptian. But if he was an Israelite man, then it would have been counted amongst the father. Although we were told not to commingle amongst other cultures of people. not only due to bloodlines and due to political reasons, specifically due to the form of worship of the different gods that go along. So this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Y'all, please stop expecting biracial women to speak for black women, because they don't speak for me. And it's no love lost, because there was no love beginning. There's no hate. It's well wishes to everybody. It's just we have to begin to know that there's a difference. It's a difference, even if we don't want to admit it. This is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems, signing off with y'all.